Y'all ready for a blime spree? Alright, welcome back everyone. You're Ground Zero Salem, once again, with your host Pat. I will never not be your host Pat. We're listening to Bootlicker, the live tape, live in the swamp. British Columbia, Canada, raw hardcore punk. Their LP was one of my favorites of the year. Talked about it not that long ago. Short to the point, pissed hardcore. A lot of early 80s American influences, as well as some D-beat in there. They even cover A Look at Tomorrow by Discharge on this. Really like the shell of the actual cassette, and since it's in the player right now, I took a picture of it because I'm that much of a nerd. But it's got a cool blood splatter on it. Check it out. All right. So, pile of LPs, pile of tapes. The usual fare. I got a few kind of almost post-punky things to talk about first, and then some hardcore and metal. You know how I do. At the top, this just came out. This band's from Iceland. Don't want to mess up the pronunciation, but I probably will. Born. I don't think it's Bjorn, because there's no J in there. Drottningar Daudans. Super icy. Icy. Cold. Ethereal, yet kind of hard-hitting post-punk stuff with still a strong emphasis in the punk. Very bass-led, bass-driven sort of stuff. Echoing influences from Joy Division and the like. Maybe a bit of Wire even, or early Susie, I'd say. But yeah, they really, in terms of atmosphere, they really do have like a nice kind of cold vibe. That's very good. It came out on Iron Lung just recently. I think just a couple days ago, a week or two ago. Just arrived at my doorstep a couple days ago. Then this is a 2020 LP, if I'm remembering right. Dead Cells, also from BC, from Vancouver. And this is kind of like more death rock kind of stuff. They do have a lot of that sort of atypical kind of goth thing going on, but this reminds me more of like Rick Agnew-ish kind of stuff. There's kind of more of a TSOL vibe to it. And there was something with the vocals where I was like, who does this guy sound like? Who does the vocalist sound like? And it reminds me a lot of The Prowl from Western Mass, if you're not familiar with them. They were more of a hardcore band, like fast hardcore, but they did have a lot of like kind of TSOL and gothy touches to their music. And Dead Cells sound like something along those lines, but more in like kind of a post-punk, but also TSOL and maybe a bit of Wipers, kind of Pacific Northwest kind of vibe. Really good LP. Just I1, Roman numeral 1, whatever. From 2019. This band just put out a brand spanking new EP that I've seen floating around on Instagram and stuff. This is their album from a couple of years ago, Rash. Self-titled, fucking great Swedish hardcore, honoring their forebearers, all the great kind of fast hardcore bands, hardcore punk bands that came out of Sweden, but also a fair amount of like UK 82 kind of catchiness to it, some American hardcore, Black Flag-ish kind of stuff going on. I'm hearing great loud fuzzy bass, great venomous vocals courtesy of Hilda. Really, really good stuff. Super into it. Speaking of their forebearers, and I'm sure an influence on Rash, Totalitar. I've been waiting for this to come out for a while. This is the reissue of their second LP, Ni Maste Bort, which came out on Prank. This originally came out in 97. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, maybe it was just me before I was more familiar. It's probably that. It's probably my own implicit biases here. I saw Totalitar at a festival called Pointless Fest in Philadelphia. God, I want to say that was like year 2003 or something like that. And it was at this Unitarian church that does a lot of gigs in Philly. They played with Tragedy and Rambo and Tear It Up and a bunch of bands. And it was just a wall of noise. And I mean, that ever-present, powerful D-beat drumming style was, you know, very strong in their sound, rang through, you know, the entire venue. And I've always just kind of thought of them as like a one-tempo kind of band, but I realize now that I'm kind of doing them, or have done them rather, a rather big disservice. They do have that drumming style, you know, they kind of perfected it really, like, did it really, really well, but they have a lot of different approaches to song structures and riffs. I mean, they're all very fast and fist-pumping, and you can pogo to most of it, you know, which is important. You need to be able to pogo to stuff. But really, I mean, they have a lot of different approaches to writing punk rock, hardcore punk songs. You know, some of the stuff is a little bit more like happy-ish, kind of, you know, mid-paced. A lot of the stuff's more, like, a lot faster and raging. So yeah, Totalitar's awesome, man. I've just gotten back into them, or really gotten more into them in the past couple of years. Gotten their first LP, and then they have a compilation of, like, all their singles and stuff. That record's amazing too. This is a project called Wallachia that came out in the mid-90s, I want to say. I'll take a look here. The main songwriter, it's like one guy who did this. I looked up the other bands he was in, and not really familiar with them. It's more of like a black metal dude from somewhere in Scandinavia. I forget which country. Lars Stavdal. And this is like really, really transcendent, really, really well done atmospheric black metal, but with these crazy roaring, affected, almost like yowling death metal vocals all over it. They're kind of like an acquired taste. He actually mentioned something about that in the liner notes, talking about how the vocals might not be for everyone. But really, I think the vocals are great. Kind of brings me back to like a few of the weirder bands that I was into going way back to when I made that video on the JL America bands. I'm trying to remember the names of them right now. I'll put a caption when I remember it. But yeah, those really, really weird growl vocals that are through like 2 or 3 different effects that sound just nuts. And it's great, like, kind of atmospheric, sort of vampiric, epic black metal stuff for the music. Then, Think I Care. So, Deathwish Inc., the hardcore label and distributor, had a sale, and they distribute all the Painkiller titles. Painkiller is a pretty well-known label if you're into hardcore, especially if you like the faster hardcore and power violence kind of end of things. They're out of Massachusetts. They've been around for a grip. They put out a lot of good stuff. So a lot of this stuff was discounted quite a bit, and it was just holes I needed to fill, bands I wanted to check out. This is the Think I Care compilation LP. It's like a Central Mass hardcore band from, I want to say they were around, like, maybe even going back to the late 90s, but early 2000s at least. I think they called it a day, 2011 or 12, maybe? Something like that. Played a few reunions recently. They started out as sort of a fastcore sort of band, or, you know, something along the lines of Infest. I don't really want to use the power violence tag because I don't think it quite fits. But fast, angry, brutal, negative, violent hardcore. Certainly if you like Infest, you probably will like this, but there's more like a Boston hardcore kind of influence in it. Maybe some later era 80s New York hardcore, ever so slightly. As time wore on, they kind of weaved more of a sheer terror influence into their sound and more of like a tougher NYHC thing, more slow parts, more moshy parts. But these first couple of 7 inches that are compiled on here, with I think a comp track or two, are just face ripping, paint peeling, pissed, hardcore punk. Really, really deep, throaty vocals. We're not talking extreme metal or grind, but about as far as you can go before turning into that from a hardcore place. Think I Care was great. Great band. This is my favorite stuff by them, but I like almost everything they did. The Mongrel 10-inch is a beast. That's a great record, too. Then we got Wet Brain. I just gave this one spin. It's a Cleveland band. I know they had members that were in other stuff, but most notably Wedge, the drummer, was in Nine Shock's Terror and Bomb Builder. This is just really snotty hardcore punk with a few kind of melodic, bassy noodlings that kind of remind me of early Husker Du, kind of a little bit. There's some more nods to melodicism on it, so it's not a one-trick pony. But yes, kind of real snotty, bratty kind of vocals. Kind of reminds me of Career Suicide. That's really good. Just going to make that refocus there. Yeah, got to get a new camera. Just got this camera, I already hate it. All right, we're back in focus there. But yeah, Wet Brain, great Cleveland stuff. Bargain Bum approved. And this is the final one from the Painkiller stuff. This is Wound Man. Shrink's still on it. Why don't I rip that off? So this is also within the realm of, extreme hardcore, power violence kind of stuff. Trevor Vaughn and Justin DeTore are two vets that have done a lot of bands in the New England area. Trevor was in X-Files X. Justin was in so many bands, including Innumerable Forms and some other stuff. But I digress. This is... it's a little bit heavier than your average, and I'm saying this for lack of a better term, power violence kind of record. It's got those slow, heavy parts, but it kind of lapses almost into sludge territory here and there. Almost gets into sort of grind tempos too. It's really, really, really fucking heavy. I mean, this also brings to mind almost sort of a Stench Crust kind of thing. And there's touches of that on there as well, I'd say, as far as influences go. Then you've got Torture Squad. So I did a big order from a distro and label called Spirit Coffin Publishing. I just kind of came across it, read some descriptions of the bands on their label, which I'll talk about when I get to the tapes. But this was being distroed by them. Torture Squad, Shivering. This originally came out sometime in the mid to late 90s. I think it was 95 or 96. This is a Brazilian band. And while a lot of their countrymen, like Crisian and the like, were kind of going for the whole arms race of extremity and playing as fast as you can, these folks were more of like a throwback kind of band. They have a really Celtic Frost kind of riff style and guitar tone almost. It's way more of a catchy riff-oriented kind of affair. Still death metal in the vocal department, but like a lot more, like riffy, thrashy kind of stuff going on musically. Good stuff. Irrefutably Brazilian, for sure. Then we got Juggernaut, Trouble Within. I just read a quick snippet about this band, and I was like, all right, looking at like Metal Blade records from the early to mid 80s that I can still afford, seeing like if they're interesting. Juggernaut, this is, I think, their second. It's got the vocalist who sang for San Antonio Slayer, and it's it's leaning into like thrash metal, still kind of traditional in a lot of ways, particularly the clean vocals and everything. It's oddly technical. There's a lot of like kind of disjointed twists and turns and everything in terms of songwriting and songs that go in directions that you don't expect them to. Seems kind of raw, seems kind of off a little bit. Did not immediately impress me the first couple of spins, but I keep reading about how these guys are really important in terms, and them kind of being a precursor to like Watchtower and bands like that, also from Texas, in terms of like complexity and what was to be more of an extreme genre of metal. So that's cool. I'll give it some more chances. So lately I've been into picking up some stuff on Alchemy Records. You can see pretty much the entire Alchemy catalog on the back of this compilation here. I'll hold that up for you. You got Virulence, which those members went on to be in Fu Manchu. Paranoia, Spiderworks, Guillotine, The Grim. Some pretty well-known bands, namely Neurosis there. And the Melvins, huge band. Sacrilege BC, who you might be familiar with if you're a thrasher. Clown Alley, Poison Idea, of course, super important hardcore band. And I figured this was like a short-lived label from the West Coast. They weren't around for super long. Most of the stuff I like. A lot of the stuff I already had. I mean, Pain of Mind I've had for forever. A while ago I showed this off on cassette, like 2 or 3 years ago. So I figured I'd fill the holes and get some of the stuff I don't have. And I don't think I can afford gluey porch treatments, so we won't worry about that. But I have almost everything else. The Spiderworks, I'm not sure if that actually came out. I had trouble even seeing if that was on Discogs, but I digress. I picked up a few things. I've had this Paranoia for a while. So I got this. This is the compilation. It's like a couple songs by each band. I got The Grim, Face of Betrayal. This is good. This is certainly along the lines of kind of hardcore punk from California. Other bands like the previously mentioned Virulence as well as Blast. You know, kind of you've got sort of like, you know, Do the Worm, surf punk kind of vibes. You know, the predecessors being DI and TSOL and stuff like that. Suicidal early on, but going in kind of a weird, slower kind of direction, getting a little strange, probably experimenting with psychedelics, you know, but very still like that nasally kind of vocal execution that you got with those bands. But yeah, getting heavier and weirder. And Guillotine is that sound as well, I'd say, but throwing in more thrash metal, more crossover, you know, but still, yeah, like kind of snotty skate surf kind of stuff. Good stuff. This gets pretty damn thrashy, but it doesn't really lose its West Coast hardcore roots, I'd say. Focus up. There we go. Tempter. So I got a little confused with this band because I knew that this was coming out on Quality Control. I saw that it was being distroed by Sorry State, who are, you know, down the street from me in Raleigh there. I thought it was a British band because of, you know, the style. You can tell it's definitely kind of a Crust, Stench, late 80s sort of thing going on there, at least aesthetically. And then I remembered reading that it's, at least most members are from Virginia. It's some of the chief songwriters, or maybe it's one guy, not sure, behind Candy and Akulu. And this is very much a love letter to a lot of that Stench Crust stuff from the era that I just mentioned. Hellbastard, of course, Amoebics, Sacrilege, Axe Grinder. It's got sort of like drawn out thrash metal riffs with like squeals, with like a lot of just kind of like murky production, murky atmosphere to it. You know, definitely that ominous intro that a lot of those kind of bands had. Great venomous vocals from Valentina there. Yeah, good, really heavy stuff. It doesn't really sound like they're trying to do a carbon copy of a specific band. And now that I know that it's like dudes from Candy and Akulu, it makes sense because the riffs are super impactful and hard-hitting and just get your head nodding, you know? And I know that both those bands do a really good job of writing music that does that to you, regardless of genre. Then we'll get into the Spirit Coffin stuff. Journey into Darkness. So I bought this mostly because I think this band's like 2 or 3 records deep already. Never had heard of them before. You know, it's orchestral black metal stuff, so maybe that's why that's not always my forte, other than, you know, a few things here and there, some of the classics. But this is, the chief songwriter is the dude from Sorrow, that old, like, doom death band from Long Island. So, sorry about that glare. So, it had me curious, and it's about as far from Sorrow, sound-wise, as you can get while still being metal, really. But it's very well done. Super loud keyboards in the mix, kind of cosmic, symphonic, orchestral, kind of black metal stuff. So, I don't know. Black metal folks out there might dig this. Ben, if you're watching this, maybe scope this out if you haven't already. I think it's good. Then Nether, and they're from Bulgaria, I want to say. I'm trying to remember if it's Bulgaria or Croatia. Beyond the Celestial Sphere. This is death thrash stuff, but almost more progressive. The only thing I can really think of that's like kind of close to it, somewhat, maybe a little bit, is that last Ripper EP. But the songs on this are long. I mean, I think it's only 6 songs, and it goes into like 42 or 43 minute kind of territory. Regardless, though, I'm never bored with this. The riffs on this are endless and awesome. Really, really good thrashy death metal stuff from Eastern Europe. Speaking of Eastern Europe, we have Merzotna Potvora. They're from Kiev, Ukraine. I hope they're okay. Solidarity to all the people of the Ukraine right now, by the way. These guys play really, really well done black thrash. Not in a way that I can pin down and really compare it to anybody. I can't really just say like, oh, this reminds me of Aura Noir. You know, this reminds me of Niflheim, because it's not. They get a lot of the black end of things from like really, really raw, almost necro black metal. Certainly like a few Dark Throne-ish moments in terms of just maybe a couple of riffs here and there, and just the production and the vocal execution, the recording. A lot of like 1-2, 1-2, almost kind of like oompa beats. The music and the guitar attack is way more precise and way more like a thrash speed sort of thing. It's way more of more of a Teutonic kind of approach, really. It's very, very good. It's very raw. It's very punk sounding, and yeah, I hope these folks are doing all right. Great album. Then we've got Xanathar, Dark Moon. This is the last one from the Spirit Coffin releases that I picked up. This is excellent as well. Quite a journey on this one. I guess thematically, it's based on a 1991 PC game. And I guess I feel like a D&D poser for not remembering this off the top of my head. It's something with Beholder in the title. We all know what a Beholder is. But I was never into the PC gaming things. Dark Moon's in the title of the PC game anyway. But I'm certainly down for that stuff. And this is really cool. It's got elements of raw black metal. It's got elements of dungeon synth, and a lot of trad HM thrown in there. That the guy sounds like Bruce Dickinson with these wails over this like pretty like necro sounding trad BM stuff. It's cool. It's definitely a journey. I'll throw in a caption of what that PC game is. Guess what that sounds like? You guessed it. First Bathory record. Actually showed it to Ben. He joked Vital Remains because I think that's the same pentagram, just yellow. But at any rate, yeah, it's a worship project. Obviously, it's a love letter. It's really well done. I'm trying to remember what that Yellow Goat project, Joel Grind, sounded like. I remember that being pretty decent too. And there's probably other early Bathory worship bands that I don't know of, but I also admire the bravery here. You're in your underpants. Just check me out. I'm in my underpants. Just loving the First Bathory. But yeah, if you like the First Bathory, it's really good. It's well done. You want that again? I mean, in all fairness, self-titled Bathory, there's not too much stuff that sounds exactly like that. Obviously, you got, the Venom and Motorhead influence, but the way it's was executed at the time was pretty singular, so. I had some tapes that I bought off of a place called Dead Format. They distro a bunch of different titles, a lot of bootleg cassettes that I was very, very happy to buy. This one is on Tape Rot. Most of these are on a label called Tape Rot, an imprint called Tape Rot. That lots of stuff, lots of cool stuff. This is just a repro of the Charles Bronson 10-inch Youth Attack, which is probably the best thing Chucky B ever did. Just great. Very, very snotty, very pissed, quick, to the point, short song, hardcore from the mid-90s, late 90s. Very, very important band, great band. Of course, Mark McCoy went on to do Youth Attack Records, played in a whole bunch of bands, Das Oath and a slew of others, and releases very limited, soon-to-be expensive hardcore records on his label. Then you've got this Misfits Live WNYU, October 23rd, 1981. I was a little bit disappointed by this because it's only 3 songs and the rest is interviews. But the songs sound great. I can't really tell if they're live or not. Whatever. Doesn't matter, really. Songs sound good, and the interview footage, the interview clips are hilarious. They're super, super funny. Definitely worth the price of admission there. And we've got Joy Division, the Peel sessions. It's 2 sessions. They've been on other things. They've separately had official releases and all that, but I thought it would be cool to have them on one tape. I think those Peel sessions might be kind of pricey now on vinyl. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it sounds great. It's Joy Division. I mean, post-punk pioneers, if you didn't know. If you haven't seen that shirt with the lines on everything, you know, at this point. This Reagan Youth early 1980s demos. So, I always wanted to hear the early Reagan Youth stuff. I think I have most of these songs, these demo songs, like on another CD. There's a Live at CBGB's CD that has these tracks on it. This has a lot of instrumental versions on it, which is cool to hear. There's like 5 or 6 of the studio tracks, so it's worth the price. But it's raw, faster versions of the songs that ended up on later releases. Reagan Youth, Go Nowhere, Anytown, No Class, Degenerated. You know, if you know Airheads, you know Degenerated. New Aryans. So yeah, cool, super early, influential New York punk stuff. Then we got the Cramps Memphis Posers demos from 1977. Great early Cramps stuff. Pretty raw, but easily discernible. There's not like a lot of like loud distortion going on in their music to really muck things up. It's a cool printable shell there. Yeah, a lot of songs on this. TV Set, a lot of the early hits there. Domino, Can't Barely Stand It, Human Fly. That's the jam right there, Human Fly. The Sepultura, Ardshock Dog. This is, I don't know if this was originally a radio set. Third World Posse, Netherlands, 1992. There's a live EP that I don't think ever came out in America. I had to refresh my memory because I was like, this wasn't an actual thing that got released, right? And as far as I could gather from Discogs and whatnot, it was like 3 or 4 songs, I believe, from this set on like an EP. This is the whole set, except Arise and Inner Self are supposed to be the 2 songs that start this, that kick it off, and they're not on it. Not sure what's up with that. I actually emailed the guy being like, if there's a version of this that exists with Arise and Inner Self, that's like 2 of my favorite songs, so it'd be great to get that. If not, whatever, who cares. The rest of the recording on this is amazing. I mean, it's just like a great best of. The energy live is off the chain. Like, they sound great on this. Crucifixion, Troops of Doom, Desperate Cry, Escape to the Void, Murder, Subtraction, Altered State, Slaves of Pain, Under Siege, Primitive Future, Drug Me, and then there's a couple more songs that aren't listed on here. So I think Policia, do they do Policia? I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, really, really great live recording. Super, just raging, perfect musicianship. Like, they don't skip a beat. Awesome. Then on my buddy Ryoju's label, we got S.O.H. This is a cassette EP, Life on Edge. Not too dissimilar to Rash, I feel like. I've read some other comparisons there that kind of drew a few comparisons between the two. You can hear some D-beat kind of influence, but there's a lot. I think there's like more like UK82 on this. There's parts that remind me more of like almost like the Exploited a little bit, GBH, like that kind of stuff, as well as like, you know, pretty gnarly, like straightforward, like classic American hardcore. Yeah, real like sharp attack with all the riffs. Great hardcore punk stuff. I forgot to mention this, probably because it's a cassette and I had it grouped with the cassettes, but this is another box to check off from my Alchemy stuff. R.K.L, Rock and Roll Nightmare. I have this on LP. My buddy Grant gave it to me. It doesn't have a cover. It's just like in a DJ sleeve kind of thing, and I wanted a version of it that had all the liner notes and everything. This is a super important record. To me, it kind of bridges the gap between punk and hardcore that was starting to cross over into metal at the time. and what was to become like that NoFX Fat Record sound. R.K.L. were massively influential on NoFX, for better or for worse. They involved a lot of like really catchy like noodling guitars and like good solos, but were still very much attitude-laden California hardcore that again came from that sort of skate surf kind of background that I was talking about earlier. Yeah, really great band, R.K.L. And this record is flawless. It's so good. I'd love to have like a good official LP with the cover and the booklet, whatever comes with it, but it's like that and the Melvins record are prohibitively expensive. They're just like both well over $100, and I ain't spending that right now. And then finally we got Celestial Season, Solar Lovers. I've heard this band mentioned here and there when people talk about 90s doom death. They don't seem to get talked about a lot. And I'm not sure why. This record's really good. Mid-90s, came out on Metal Blade. They're from the Netherlands. It's odd. It's kind of an odd combination of style, meshings of different doom subgenres, and maybe that's what was off-putting to people. We've got growly kind of death vocals, and as opposed to like a really misery-inducing, drudgy, slow, like My Dying Bride or Paradise Lost kind of approach, it's more of, I don't know, kind of hearkening to 70s stuff the way the Obsessed do. It's got that more obsessed, like Pentagram, kind of woody, groovy kind of riff approach. I think it's a cool combination. I've definitely heard bands that have done it that way since. But this is a cool mix of doom styles that pretty early on, you know. And I guess they went way more in a stoner direction like later, according to what I've read. But yeah, first I've really gotten into them. That is all of it. I've listened to this bootlicker tape like 4 times recording this, and it's still rad. But yeah, you know, there's more to come as always. Always working on stuff. Let me know what you think. Drop a comment below. Like, share, subscribe. Follow me on social media. Don't be a stranger. All right?